Welcome to a video essay on Mulan. Now, it's currently the year 2020 and Disney has released a live action version of Mulan. Now, instead of talking about the live action version of Mulan, I thought that I'll talk about the original one, which the live action is based on. Um, More specifically, I thought I'll talk about why the 1998 version of Mulan tells such a great story of a hero, and in a later video, I'll talk about the original ballad and the 2020 version of Mulan and how it fails from a storytelling device. So, in the hero's journey, there are a series of 12 steps which I will briefly go through, as you can see on the screen, and we'll talk about the different aspects of it in which Mulan develops as a character. And through how I talk about it, you also begin to see maybe how the 2020 version of it fails to tell a story of a hero. So let's start from the very beginning. In the 1998 version of Mulan, we're first introduced to a very ordinary girl, right? An ordinary girl that may be a little bit witty. So if we play through the original scene, and I will, as you can see in the top left hand corner, you can see that it's a girl who is a little bit clever. She is able to demonstrate her cleverness through in this very subtle way that Disney has shown through Chinese chess. She is able to identify a clever move, which is something that is maybe a little bit more unique to her. At the same time, Mulan, in the subsequent scene, is a little bit out of place. She's supposed to be part of some kind of ceremony to help her find a husband, and it's clear that she is not like the other girls. She doesn't know the correct, maybe the etiquette. She needs to take cheat notes in order to do it, and she's just a little bit out of place. So that's the thing, right? That's her calling in the world, at least an expectation from a cultural perspective, to conform to societal expectations, but she's a bit different. And then afterwards, we have the very famous song of reflection, where she reflects on how she has failed and as a daughter, and and asked the question, what does it really mean to be herself? And at the same time, we also see a parallel in terms of her father. Her father has been conscripted for war, being the only male in the family, and she has observed how her father is clearly struggling, and she decides to take on the mantle herself because she feels like this is the only way that she can help her family. Right. Now, after this scene, we are introduced to Mushu rather, Mushu and Cricket, and Mushu is there is given to Mulan from her own ancestors in order to help her on her quest. And what Mushu tries to do initially is to try to make her look and feel more masculine, which is shown in the subsequent scene where she puffs up her chest, has a wider stance, and of course looks a bit silly, right? And it ends up showing very mixed results. Now, after this, we are introduced to some of her allies, her comrades in battle, and she undergoes some kind of training or test. And of course, this is the very famous scene with the song number, where again this showcases a different aspect of Mulan. Now, in the previous two scenes, whereby Mulan is encouraged to demonstrate her masculinity, she instead overcomes the trials and wins the trust of her companions, not through masculinity, but through again her creativity and wit. She didn't brute force her way to the top of the pole. She was rather clever about it, and what is interesting about this scene is that they try to paint Mulan in a way whereby she doesn't do exactly what everyone else does, but better. But instead, she does what people do, what the other people in the camp do, in a slightly different way to achieve the same result, or maybe even a superior result in this case. Now, afterwards, the conflict that we get introduced to during the war is the fact that we're no longer in this training camp and we're no longer talking and singing about these happy songs, but we're faced with the reality of war. Right, the platoon arrives at a village and we are introduced to the death of I think General Shang's father. Right, so now we get to the climax of the film, that there is this kind of conflict that we need to overcome. In the subsequent scene, we get the famous scene where Mulan again demonstrates her creativity and her wit by causing an avalanche on the mountain, right? And again, this is what is important in this film, in Mulan, that Mulan doesn't demonstrate her capability through overcoming people in a masculine kind of way, but again showcasing her creativity and her wit. If she had demonstrated that she was stronger or better than someone else, then this would not really be a journey about a hero. Or if they did that, then they would have to do something else in the subsequent steps with regards to introducing her and her growth as a person. But instead, they don't do that. They again focus on that side of her which is shown in the first scene, and also in this scene when she befriends her comrades. Now, based on this, she is rewarded. She is rewarded with the utmost trust of her friends and her and her comrades in battle. Now, however, we may hope that this is the end, but it isn't, right? She then has to take the road back home, and that's when it's discovered that she is a woman. Now, this is actually a really sad scene within the 1998 version of Mulan, because the gravity of the situation weighs so heavily. The fact that she is exiled and that it is a dishonor to her family and to her comrades, and that the only saving grace is the fact that she had saved them. If she had not saved them, then maybe she would have really been executed. And it is a very weighty topic in the 1998 version of Mulan. It is not something that's taken lightly. But in this actually turns out to be a blessing, because it is through this particular part of the film that she learns and discovers the Hun's plan and action, right? So that's the important thing, that she was outed, it was serious, and it was through this that it became a massive blessing. All right, and then afterwards, we head into the battle with the Emperor, where she saves the Emperor, and all of this leads to the important part around atoning for what she's or atoning for I guess this dishonor that she's introduced, that is introduced. And what is interesting in this particular scene is probably the cross-dressing aspect of it. It demonstrates that her fellow comrades and people in the platoon are no longer just talking about masculinity in order to solve a problem. They've adopted cross-dressing as a way of getting into the palace, as a way of solving the problem that they have. And the other thing that is important is that the reason or the treatment that Mulan has of the emperor is that the emperor is a person. She's not here to necessarily save China, is not here to necessarily complete a mission for the sake of the empire, but she is here to save the emperor as a human being. And I think this is important as well in the context of this particular film when you compare it and contrast it with the 2021, but we'll get to that later. So that's what we see in the Atonement of Mulan. Now, when we go to the final scene, I think the final scene is also very, very interesting in terms of telling or bringing the story all the way back to the beginning. So if we think about the story of Mulan, it is all about Mulan bringing honor to her family. So when she goes back home, notice that the first thing that she brings with her is the medallion and the sword. And she presents that to her father. This is as a way of demonstrating how she has now fulfilled her role of honoring her family. And she hopes to redeem herself through her accomplishments. But what is important here is that in this, her acceptance by her father isn't through these two items, but instead it's through her returning home. I think this is a very powerful message because it demonstrates how Mulan is embraced by her family, by her father specifically, just by being who she is, just by being the person that she is, and that she has come home as a hero. And it is not, and her father has accepted her because she is his daughter, not because of the accomplishments that she has made. And I think that Disney, in the 1998 version of Mulan, made a very deliberate choice for the father to disregard or even explicitly toss away the accomplishment of Mulan, and for him to embrace Mulan as his daughter. So that's my thinking of what makes the story of the 1998 Mulan so special. A lot of these nuances are lost when we go to the 2020 version of Mulan, and we'll talk about that at a later stage. But for now, we'll probably stop it here, and we'll revisit the 2020 version of Mulan at a later stage and talk about maybe what we can change in the story to make it a bit better. So do let me know what you think, and see you next time.